It was another quiet night at the office. No phone calls, no messages. Nothing but junk mail and overdue bills to keep me company. Seems nobody wants to hire a real private dick anymore. A professional like me. A guy who does the detective work nobody else wants to do. A guy who wears hats and walks around in a black and white world. I began contemplating a more profitable line of work, like politics.
All right, folks. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Monday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show on AM 830 WCRN. Welcome Monday, too. Happy Monday weekend. How was it? We only got a couple of these left till the big guy comes down the chimney. So, look, you could put a red hat on. Seriously. Ted, come on. The height, the beard, the white beard, the white... You could be the perfect Santa.
I spent so many years as an elf. I was Santa's helper. My dad had a huge white beard, and he had all the gear back to the 50s. You know, the boots, the belt, the pants, the jacket. I mean, it was... And when he passed, it was tough because I was his agent, you know? I used to... You know, I get the calls from all the churches, the grammar schools, you know, and I did it for like 2 years, and then I realized I'm not going to survive this.
I did it a couple of years ago. I played Santa a couple of times for the friend of mine who ran the foster care programs and stuff. So, you know, and they always liked, because the kids they didn't know me. They don't. So she would say, "Hey, can you come in? You know, come in the back door. We got the suit and all that." And this way, before that, the kids could do process of elimination and figure out who was playing it. But when you introduce another person, they have no idea who it is, and who doesn't need their own pattern and everything. That always makes a. And this, you know, I've got the beard.
Yeah,
it's not
Joe,
really white. I'm not white like yours. Yours is.
Let's face it. You and I are kind of roly-poly.
We're roly-poly.
Jiggly-bully, you know, and the kids love to hug us. So, you know, without getting in trouble, I'll tell you, it was a wonderful time in my life.
I had a really good time playing. I haven't done it for probably 20 years, but I'd do it again if somebody asked. I mean, I have my own suit, mine as well. No, I do have a red. I did buy a couple of years ago a red jacket with the white thing that is supposed to be for Christmas time and everything. And I do have to be careful because if I wear it in public and not just to a party, little kids do look at me for a while. They stare at me and they're like, did I catch him? So it's fun, guys. All right, welcome to the Monday show of the Joe Mangiacotti Show here at AM 830 WCN. That is, of course, Radio Central. Let's do the housekeeping. Of course, you can join the conversation at 508-871-7000. That's 508-871-7000 for the time that we have here together. Text line up and running, 617-297-8388, 617-297-8388. Text it like you do any other number. It appears on the screen here in the studio in real time, and we'll try to work it into the conversation. I'm broadcasting from the Cameo Studios, our palatial but not overly ostentatious studios here above or on top of the Carberry Towers in Westborough, Massachusetts. Today, behind the board flying. The board here today, behind the glass, I should say, so he'll get you set up and into the studio for two-way talking conversation. And don't forget, the station does stream 24/7 to the TuneIn app like thousands of other radio stations do. So that means you can take us anywhere. I think that's the coolest feature that we have because it's on your device, in and out of the car, shopping, whatever you're doing, you can do it. I told the story, I think, last week about going into the 99 in Framingham and the bartender finding out who I was and was very excited and told me how they listened to me and they listened to the station, Howie Carr, big time, all the time, in that the boyfriend is streaming the station on his cell phone all the time, mowing the lawn or walking around the house, so it's real easy to do. And we've got Alexa on board with us. She'll listen for you. And when you say, play WCRN, she'll do it, no questions asked, and she'll take it away. Very cool stuff, guys. 508-871-7000 to get into the conversation. Hey, don't forget the show is also turned into a podcast when I get off the air. So that means that you can, of course, download it, subscribe. I looked at the stats, the analytics, and yeah, I told you before, I was surprised. Yes, Belgium, England, Japan, interesting places that apparently have listeners.
Joe, it's got to be the hats.
Maybe it's the hats. Although I do have friends in Japan, so I'm thinking they are the ones. I should ask them. Are they the ones that are doing this? Belgium, I don't know who I got in Belgium. But the point is, it's actually iHeartRadio is where 51% of the downloads are coming from. People listening as a podcast are on iHeartRadio, but you can do it on Spotify, TuneIn, Google Play. There's several of them out there. So let's get into this. Is actually the 8th, right? So we're a day after Pearl Harbor. So I wasn't on the air for the 7th of December. And also, usually, anyone who's listened to me, I do a couple things this time of year as we talk about Pearl Harbor, and I usually talk about Civil Air Patrol of the United States Air Force Auxiliary. And today being the 8th, I want to start this hour in a place that matters, morally and historically and frankly, spiritually, in the civic sense of the word, because yesterday was Pearl Harbor Day, the 84th anniversary. So next year will be the 250th anniversary of the birth of this nation. It will be the 85th anniversary of the attack on Pearl Harbor. And I'm always struck by how quickly a nation can drift into comfort and how suddenly history can snap that comfort in two. Pearl Harbor wasn't just an attack on those ships. It was an attack on assumptions. It was the moment America learned again, the hard way, that the world does not grant you peace because you are decent or because you want to be left alone or because you're busy with your own lives. Peace has a price. Security has a price. Preparedness is not optional. Pearl Harbor reminds us that history punishes complacency. It doesn't do it with a warning label. It does it on a Sunday morning. Now, I know commemorations can become routine. We watch the ceremony, we hear the names, we honor the fallen, we feel grateful for that, and then we go back to our lives. But the day after is where the real question lives. The day after is when the principles have to outlast the ceremony. Because the lesson of Pearl Harbor is not only that we were attacked, the bigger lesson is that a free people must be awake and serious and ready, not because we're looking for conflict, but because we're trying to prevent it. And that's not just national defense in the military sense. That is a broader American ethic. It's civic, it's cultural, it's personal. It's the idea that we are all participants in the protection of this republic. In different roles, different seasons of life, different uniforms, sometimes no uniforms at all. Which brings me to the heart of what I want to talk about today, because I want to spotlight a piece of American life that most people don't fully understand, but should. And it's not just because I support it, it's because I lived it. I'm talking about Civil Air Patrol, the U.S. Air Force Auxiliary. Now, if you heard of CAP, you may think of it as just a youth program or just a volunteer aviation group, or maybe something you see at parades. But that picture is incomplete. Civil Air Patrol is one of the most quietly effective civic institutions we have in the country. It's a place where citizens become capable. And the mission is beautifully American in its logic. Emergency services, cadet program, aerospace education, 3 lanes, 1 purpose, right? To serve their communities, to save lives, and to shape futures. And if that sounds like a slogan, understand this. It's a mission that has real operational weight. You've got trained adult volunteers, pilots, ground teams, communication specialists, people who can assist in search and rescue, disaster response, and support missions when called upon. In other words, CAP is what happens when a free society produces citizens who do more than complain. They show up, they train, they participate, they practice discipline. They learn how to operate inside a system of standards, and they become an asset, not just a voice. Now, here's why this matters to me personally, because when I was in the cadet program, and I was from a very young age, and like many who experience CAP at a young age, it teaches you something that is desperately needed right now in American culture. You don't get to become excellent by wishing that this happens. You become excellent by training, by self-command, and by being accountable. CAP was a place where you learned leadership with consequences. You learned how to carry yourself with responsibility. You learned to respect the chain of command while also learning personal initiative. And those aren't just military values. Those are republic values. They are the habits of free people. At a certain point, I was commissioned as a first lieutenant in the U.S. Air Force Auxiliary, and I eventually left as a captain. And I'm telling you that not because I'm polishing a resume on the air. I'm telling you because the core point today, or of this, is civic strength is not theoretical. It's practical. It is actual institutions. It has actual training. It has actual missions. It has actual people who are doing the work when the cameras are nowhere to be found. And my experience with CAP became even more real world than ever I expected it to be, because for 2 years I flew DEA flights out of Hanscom Air Force Base. And let that land for a second. This wasn't youth leadership training. This wasn't ceremonial role. This was operational. This was the intersection of aviation skill, federal mission support, and public service. And it gave me a perspective of something we're always debating in this country. How do we maintain law and order without turning government into something bloated, arrogant, and untouchable? Well, one answer, not the only answer, but one solid answer is you build a partnership that are efficient, mission-specific, grounded in accountable service. CAP's model is one of the best examples of that, because it's not a blank check to bureaucracy. It's a trained volunteer force that can support critical non-combat missions at home. It blends professionalism with citizen responsibility. All right, we have to take our first break here on the Monday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show at AM 830 WCRN, 508-871-7000 to get into the conversation. We'll be back in 2 and 2. All right, folks, welcome back to the second segment here of the Monday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show on AM 830 WCRN, 508-871-7000. Do join the conversation. That's 508-871-7000. I'll get you into the studio for two-way talk and conversation. And, of course, you can also do that simply by texting, because we have our text line running at 617-297-8388, 617-297-8388. Let's go to the phones. We've got...
Before you go to the phones, I neglected to remind you when you were announcing all of the things that happen on this date, that today is the solemnity of the Immaculate Conception. It's a day of honoring the Mother of God, and it's not about Christ's Immaculate Conception. It's all about Mary's Immaculate Conception. So it's a day of holy obligation for those of you who want to attend.
For those of you who are Roman Catholics, there you go. Well, this is the season. Church attendance goes up this time of year. We've got the Catholics who are the Christmas Eve and Easter Catholics, and my family used to do the midnight mass the night before, or Christmas Eve. That was of course, you were half in the bag by the time you went to mass. And, you didn't go to sleep till 6 a.m, but that changes over the years.
Somebody's got to wrap the gifts.
That's true. And boy, were they wrapped. 508-871-7000 to join the conversation. Let's go to Ken waiting patiently. Hey, Ken, what say you?
Joe, how dare you describe my brother-in-law and the one day he go to church?
Yeah, yeah. You don't get him at Easter, just this Christmas? That's a group of Roman Catholics all onto their own, just the Christmas ones. Yeah.
Maybe every other Easter, too.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, yeah, it was and he had no excuse. It was like 150 yards away.
Oh, wow.
But then again, Christmas Eve, I mean, it wasn't a big deal being half of the back.
Yeah.
Walking 150 yards.
Yeah, my sisters and I would say, well, if we got to go to Mass at midnight, we might as well have a little buzz on. So, yeah. It got bad when you were taking the flask into church with you, though.
I was the type that my wife, mother-in-law, brother-in-law, probably the father-in-law too, they would stay up, and I'm like, nah, it's too late for me. So I'd be sound asleep.
Yeah. Well, I would rather do it on Christmas Eve than have to do it on Christmas Day. So I would do the Christmas Eve. Yeah, that was good.
But your first topic brought back memories, and here we are on a calendar. The day that will live in infamy.
Infamy, yeah.
And memories of my mom. She was first year in college when that day occurred.
And where was the college, Ken? Where was she in the country?
Yukon.
Okay.
She was only 17 because she completed high school a year and a half early. That's another story.
Mm-hmm.
But the amazing story that people can't imagine is that within a week, more than half of the campus's men were gone. That's the reaction.
More than half of the campus?
More than half of the men at college.
Well, they enlisted.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, yeah. Similar. We saw similar stuff after 9/11. Yeah.
And she served in a way that you can relate to in the Air Force story, and that she was a watch-out tower person. In other words, she had her 8 hours, and it could be any 8 hours, and you know what she was looking out for.
Yeah. A lot of people don't realize that, Ken, and let's fill the listeners in. There were an extremely uncomfortable number of U-boats, Nazi submarines off our coast. Maine was a very popular drop-off point to put agents, Nazi agents, into the United States, which we had many of them. And there were many, many U-boats patrolling just right here off the coast of the Atlantic, and Pacific for that matter. But back in those, right, we had the watchtowers. We also had, CAP was doing flights because you can get a better visual, even if the boats are close to the surface. I mean, right now, you can, if you take a flight down in Nantucket, and I always, I used to actually go to Nantucket almost every Saturday for lunch until my friends sold their plane a couple of years ago, unfortunately. But you can see the sharks swimming, and it's amazing. You'll go by some of the beaches and just how close the sharks are to the shore, and people are totally unaware, but the same thing, you can see those silhouettes. So there were a lot of submarines off our coast prior to us entering the war, and then certainly after the war. And we used to do the blackouts. I mean, London more than us, but we would try to do it on the coast.
So, yes, there were those that were near the coast. She wasn't. She was about 50 miles away, so her lookouts were for planes.
Yeah.
And people, yes, the subs were the biggest threat, but there were expeditions of spies. I think there was one in particular in Long Island where a bunch of spies came in the middle of the night and started to do their thing. And they got captured within a day, and within probably 30 days, they were dead. In other words, our military justice system took care of them. And they were Germans.
Yep.
So some amazing stories, you can't imagine now. And now we have to hug the drug traffickers. Oh, we killed them. Oh, isn't that awful? I mean, the mindset is just so different now.
Yeah.
Earlier generations.
Yeah, Ted, you want to say something?
Yeah, I don't think this is really that humorous. Right now, we are in a state of insurgency in this country.
Oh.
We have foreigners, armed foreigners, invading our infrastructure. Young women are being, I can't even use the words. And these things are not humorous. These things are very serious and dangerous.
Well, this is the gear shift that we've seen, because this whole battle on drugs and so forth, it's been going on for decades, and it has been ineffective, hasn't worked. But see, I think what this comes down to, and Ken, your feedback on this is appreciated, and Ted too, is we've been fighting this the legal way, through the courts, Coast Guard, intercede, arrest, fight it through the courts. Meanwhile, the narcos, the cartels, the drug traffickers have been fighting with military rules. You know, they have so much money. Even if you look at their soldiers, they have the flak jackets and wonderful weaponry and night vision and all kinds of things, and drones, tons of drones. And those boats, those are very expensive high-speed boats. They're using military tactics, military-grade equipment. They're fighting a war and invading us on a level that we're not fighting back till now. And the Trump administration and Pete has changed it from us fighting it on the legal to fighting it on their level, which is a war level. And that's where it's at now, and it's effective. I mean, in that cabinet meeting last week, Hexeth even said, you know what? We're having a hard time finding the boats now. The message has got out because they can't get somebody to say, hey, take this boat. You're going to make $20,000 if you take this, boom. No, I don't think so. Well, $20,000 ain't going to help me if I'm dead.
Joe, your point about their resources needs to be understood by the American people. When you see a boat with 4 engines going out at, so many knots per minute.
52 knots.
And, maybe that's, but the tunneling. I don't want people to think that it's 4 little Mexicans with pickaxes and shovels.
No.
They have the resources to buy the equipment that tunnels.
Yeah.
And it's very
you can
readily
drive
available.
Small vehicles through these tunnels.
The French
they have
and the
venting
Germans
systems,
sell them all
electrical
over the world.
systems. It's crazy. So we've been fighting it with one hand tied behind our back. Like I said, we've been fighting the drug infestation in this country, and again the murdering, because I do not refer to these fentanyl poisonings as overdoses. Let's be clear on that. Language is specific, and they do have meaning. And if you overdose, you are taking a drug, and it is the drug you think you're taking, and you take too much of it, or you get a hot shot. When you take Ritalin, you believe to be Ritalin, and it's laced with fentanyl, that is straight up manslaughter. That is murder rather. That is poisoning. That is poisoning. And I use the analogy of me tainting your insulin, and you taking what you think is 30 cc's of insulin, but has fentanyl in it, and you are dead before you hit the floor.
There's an army of Klaus von Bülows out there. Poisoning
That's
our
a time
youth.
reference. A lot of people might not remember Klaus von Bülow with his wife. I'm sorry, Ken, get back to your thoughts. We're eating up the time in your segment here.
Klaus von Bülow, I believe, was Rhode Island.
Yeah, he did his wife, right? He poisoned her. I forget what.
Yeah, it wasn't far from where I was growing up. But anyway, it's a very simple explanation. This administration loves America and is going to do what it takes to protect it. The previous one was just the opposite. They wanted our culture to be destroyed.
Yeah.
Doesn't take a lot to
look, there's more and more, Ken, coming out because of emails and access now that both DOJ and the Trump administration and the FBI, they have, in that there was absolutely intention and planning behind opening the borders and allowing that level of invasion to get to a consequence or a result that they wanted. Just like we're finding out more and more that Barack Obama, it was a lot more to do with the Russian hoax and so forth. So let's see if that leads us to any indictments.
But interestingly, Joe, there are videos coming out from Joe Biden 35 years ago.
Oh,
we're using words like
yes, you saw. I'm glad you saw that. I shared it on my social. We got to tell the listeners. Go to my Facebook show page, because I shared this of Joe Biden, a younger Joe Biden. He was never totally, the smartest man in the room ever, but when he could actually speak, and he was saying almost word for word what we hear from Trump and Hexeth right now. Look, we're against the clock. Ken, if you want, you can hold through the break to finish up, because we ate up a lot of that time. But we have to take the mid-show break here on the Monday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show on AM 830 WCRN, reminding you to join the conversation at 508-871-7000. 508-871-7000. We'll be back in two, folks. All right, folks, welcome back here to the second half of the Monday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show on Radio Central AM 830 WCRN. Ken, I said stay through the break. You hung up, but you're welcome to call back, because I know we weren't done with it. We ate it up with some of the other stuff. Sorry about that. But 508-871-7000 to join the conversation. That's 508-871-7000. Yeah, this stuff is going on, but in reference to, of course, Pearl Harbor, and what's interesting is, of course, during, it used to be called the Army Air Corps, and the Air Force wasn't created till after World War II, when it became the United States Air Force. But one of the things is, it both Civil Air Patrol, as well as a lot of civilian aviation organizations, popped up mostly after World War I, and there was a general, Billy Mitchell, which is actually an award you reach in the cadet program of Air Force Auxiliary. And when you get to your Billy Mitchell, that's when you become a cadet captain. But he was an Army general, and he lived till 36. But back, because of World War I, he was an aviator and he was the commander of the Army Air Services in World War I. And after the war, Mitchell lobbied the top brass of the Army for an increase in air combat planes and support. Because, for a long time in this world, planet Earth, the Navy, the strongest Navy, controlled the globe, i.e. the British Empire. Sun never sets on the British Empire, because they had the strongest Navy on the planet. They had the strongest Navy on the planet when we declared independence. And we had to fight the strongest Navy. But they were fighting a lot of battles at that time. But Mitchell was trying to tell them, hey, these planes, remember, World War I, they had biplanes. They were not very powerful. Even then, they used to puncture the eardrum of pilots so that they could dive, because in change, there was no press. These were open cockpits. There was no pressurized cabins. And he tried to explain to them, yes, I understand the Navy's so important, but you guys got to understand this new thing of aviation is going to be a real game changer. And we were still behind Germany and other nations when we entered World War II. So in order to prove this, Mitchell decided that he was going to bomb some battleships, including the Alabama, sinking both of the ships. And he did this in 1921. And Mitchell's experiments aimed to prove that air power could effectively destroy battleships, thereby challenging the Navy's reliance on traditional naval vessels. Now, that also earned him a demotion, by the way, from general to lieutenant colonel, and he had to work his way back up. But there were some great aviation icons that just paved the way for aviation, and of course, like I said, entering World War II, we were not the best Air Force on the planet by any means, but we were there at the end of it, and from there came things like Top Gun schools and
Yeah, it wasn't until 1940 that we developed the Civil Aeronautics Board, which you have to put this in context.
Yeah.
This was the time of barnstorming. This was the time where people would build or buy an airplane and use it for whatever purpose they could to make money. And, you know,
crop
a lot
dusting.
of it,
advertising, tagging, in those days you would have the shows, and people would tie themselves to the wings, or they would have the trick upside down biplanes. This was exploding. Civil aviation was getting going. It hadn't quite become what it would become in the 40s and 50s. And by the 60s and 70s, they were billing aviation as the luxury trip. Back in those days, right, when we had Pan Am, was an airline.
Well, you got to remember what Billy was up against. The people in the government saw aeronautics as a circus event.
Yeah.
They didn't think of it as something strategic or powerful as Billy saw it.
Yeah, which is dumbfounding to me. That common sense shows, Jesus, look what people are doing with drones now. And I don't think our laws have caught up to drones. We have increased the laws, the licensing, and the governing of drones, but drones are incredible on what they can do, because you can now, civilian, not even military, you can purchase drones with infrared cameras, night vision cameras, and they can carry payloads of things.
There's a guy who just released a study that shows you can make more money as a drone pilot than as a 747 pilot at an airline.
Yeah, because you've got the guys are out there and who are doing like even the real estate listings. I know some friends of mine who have decided to go that route. You know, they're taking pictures, which is you get on to a couple of these super brokers. All right, and if you're doing $40-50 million a year as an individual broker, you have a team, and you're not taking pictures, you're not putting signs in yards or pulling them out. You've got people doing all that. So the next step, if you take these high-end, I'm talking the $1.2, $2 million, $3 million listings. You don't just go in there with your iPhone, take a few pictures like you do and a typical broker's going to do on a listing. These people send pro photographers in. Well, the next evolution in that would be the drone pilot who are taking the exterior shots, flying over the pool area and all of that. And you can knock several of those off a day, and it is a good business. But you also have the event drone pilots. You've got now they are looking at drones with the delivery. I think, is it Papa John's or Papa Gino's? Papa John's, I think. One of them, Domino's maybe. I don't know, but there are some pizza places who have been experimenting with the drones flying the delivery. And sure, now you can punch in the GPS coordinates and it will basically fly itself there, but you still need somebody monitoring it and backing it up. Even your drone you get for fun knows that when it runs out or it's running out of juice, it will fly itself back to the base. It's incredible stuff. But yes, drone pilot is and the military's been using drones, obviously. Well, someone's got to fly them.
And our legal system is using it daily in court cases. It's
large departments, Boston, New York, L.A., they have their own drone fleet. And
it's also being used by the insurance industry to verify claims.
And the private detective agency as well, folks.
Yes,
I own a couple drones. They can get you a good look at a neighborhood that you need to surveil, or if you need to, whatever. I'm not going to get into all that. But the drones are very effective tools and to be used. So, and people are going to make some money off of that stuff, obviously. But December 7th, 84th anniversary on the attack of Pearl Harbor. At the Pearl Harbor National Memorial is where they had the event yesterday. The official theme, Building Pathways to Peace, emphasizing remembering the moment peace was shattered in 1941.
It's important to point out that famous speech that went out over the radio, that fireside chat, that didn't happen till December 8th.
Yeah, well, after the event, of course.
Yesterday, a day that will
live in infamy. And Look, the ceremonies honored the more than 2,400 Americans killed. Now, we didn't see something like that, of course, happen again until 9/11. And the attack included a wreath laying, memorial remarks, and moments of silence. I don't know because I haven't seen anything, but I'm assuming that President Trump will go to Pearl Harbor for the 250th anniversary of as part of the birthday celebration. Again, the fact that he skipped over 2 non-consecutive is kind of cool in the sense, he gets to be the president during the 250, also the games in California and stuff that were all kind of put in place in his first term. And I think the new Air Force One is being delivered during his second term. So he'll be the first president to use the latest and greatest Air Force One, which is, they've gone from a 737 to 47, I believe. But look, a poignant 2025 reality, right, as the survivor of generations fade, right? Because I think they had a few World War II veterans there, but come on, even if you were 18 when you went in, these guys are old. And they had a nurse. I mean, so we're running out of those guys. And I just hope that we have collectively over the years recorded and documented and got their stories. But that was a generation that did not like to talk about the war at all. So it's not easy to always get the background, get the stories out of them, because they weren't real chatty about it, if you know what I mean. Especially, when you've got, by the way, they're redoing the Band of Brothers. And if you haven't seen that miniseries, Easy Company, it's
the original film is fantastic.
Oh yeah, you gotta watch it. It's one of those must do on the bucket list. But as that survivors of that generation, they fade, commemoration is increasingly carried by active duty service members and preserved through oral histories and archives, making a shift from living memory to historic stewardship. And God, I hope that is done and done well and kept in place. And the day after the anniversary is when reflection becomes policy, right? Preparedness, vigilance, civic memory aren't one-day rituals. Building pathways to peace, that was the theme of yesterday's remembrance. It's not naive optimism. It's a reminder that peace is built on strength and alliances and readiness and moral clarity. And I think that is something that we have to keep in mind when we get to this modern day narco boats and what's happening in international waters, the moral clarity of this. I know they tried to spin this whole thing that there were war crimes involved, and there weren't any at all. And the Admiral made it very clear. Hegseth made that very clear as well. But with very few surviving witnesses able to attend, we're now responsible for transmitting the lessons, not the mythology, but as a warning and gratitude to those men and women who did serve in those days. So I encourage you to honor local World War II veterans, museums, and family histories as well. Keep them alive. We have to take a third and final break here on the Monday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show on AM 830 WCRN. We'll be back in 2 minutes and 2 seconds. All right, folks, welcome back here. Wow, fast show today. Fourth and final segment on the Monday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show here on AM 830 WCRN Radio Central. Again, you can join the conversation for the time we have left together at 508-871-7000. That's 508-871-7000. And don't forget, I do stream it to the station's Facebook page, YouTube channel, as well as my social media platforms, which include Facebook, X, and Twitch TV, as well as LinkedIn profile, and, yes, we also do Rumble. All right. So I want to move the conversation because deportation waves, right, hit Louisiana. But here's the thing. Phones won't stop ringing off of businesses. See, so there's a story circulating out there, Louisiana, that captures a claim we hear from the tradesmen and small business owners all over the country. And that is when the enforcement rises and illegal labor declines, American workers stop getting undercut and the phones start ringing. Now, just like Hexeth was saying, geez, we can't find any boats to even go after anymore. Well, guess what? A lot of these construction sites are either empty or close to empty because illegals have decided they're not going to show up and be out in the open. And if they're illegal and they're here illegally working, they're not showing up at the job site. So what's happening? You got general contractors who are now having to call companies that are owned by citizens, employing citizens, legitimate companies who are paying insurance and workers' comp, and there's nobody to undercut them because a lot of these, and I know people are going, oh, get all this. Look, there are illegals that are working for a company under the table, and the company's doing everything correctly, but there are a lot of people who will do, framing or wall work or whatever, and they're not paying workers' comp, and they're not paying liability insurance, and they're maybe not paying all the taxes, and therefore they can undercut. And a general contractor doesn't always care as long as the work gets done, it gets done fine. And I'm not talking about the quality of the work. Quality of the work is usually very good quality. It's just the other part of it that isn't always there. So when enforcement raises, the illegal labor declines, and they stop getting undercut. Ted?
You know what? A lot of people don't understand. The construction business is a deadline business. You need something done before the next thing gets delivered.
Yeah. You cannot put the electrical in after all your wall boards are up. It's just, or plumbing. It's just that you got to do it in a certain order, and you absolutely have to make sure. And that's what a general contractor. He runs a 3-ring circus. But there's this Louisiana construction worker says his business has been a sudden surge in demand since deportations ramped up, and he credits simple labor reality. Fewer illegal workers willing to take jobs below market wages, meaning more work and better leverage for lawful American tradesmen. Now, this kid he's 27 now. He started this construction business at 18. There's a clip of him online. You want to play that?
So we've had ICE and DHS down in Louisiana for about a week now, and as a business owner, I've been running my own construction company since I was 18 years old. I'm 27 now. We do painting, roofing, drywall, tile, ceramics, trim, molding, carpentry, flooring, concrete, a little bit of everything. I'm seeing firsthand just the shockwave them boys are sending across the state. No immigrants want to go to work. None of them want to even ride in a truck like mine with a ladder rack on it. And it is so amazing. I've gotten more calls in the last week than I've gotten in the last 3 months. I got 20 calls in one day. GC scrambling to try and finish projects. Halfway through, these guys not showing up to work.
GCs, general contractors, are scrambling because they don't have it. And a couple of years ago, almost 2 years ago now, remember DeSantis put the bill in, and I've talked about this. If you want to stop illegals working, stop trying to go after the illegals. You go after the people who hire them. You hold it on them. And and that's what DeSantis did in Florida. He put a bill through, and what it says is you're in real big trouble. If you knowingly hire an illegal and you fudge the papers and you're in big trouble. And once they put that in, all of these housing developments and construction jobs that were going on in Florida, they were ghost town the next day. They just got out of there. Now, you don't have to accept every sentence of this story as gospel to recognize the larger policy principle here, and that is mass illegal migration creates a shadow labor market. It adds to the underground economy, the cash economy as well. So the shadow labor markets distort wages, punish law-abiding workers, and reward employers who can game that system. So if we break that down, and argue this, the bigger question in hand here is, who is the U.S. government obligated to prioritize first? Citizens and lawful residents, or the system that quietly benefits from illegal labor? And we see that happening among our politicians in Washington and among the big corporations, because there's always been that shadow hand saying, yeah, we got immigration, but let's not be really, really tight on that, because I own farmland, I own factories, I own this, I own that. And this misconception that all of the fruit and vegetables are picked by illegals is just not true. Now, they may be picked by migrants who are on work visas, but the number of illegals actually picking it is so low. And when I hear some Jamoke politician tell us, be careful because you're going to have to pay $20 for your tomato and your chef salad and this and that, I would be insulted if I was among the immigration. Well, I was born here, but my grandparents weren't. Because how do they think? Didn't Hunter Biden say something really stupid about that too? Washing your clothes and cleaning your homes, that only jobs migrants can do are these types of jobs. 508-871-7000 to join the conversation. Let me jump to the phone real quick because Mark's been waiting patiently. Hey, Mark, what say you?
Yeah, these big developers, they hire these subcontractors. And the subcontractors, they just want warm bodies. They don't care where they come from, and neither does the developer. No. All he cares about is getting that flat roof up on his condominium or whatever the heck it is that he's working on. So, yeah, the Trump doctrine is working. You go after the subcontractors who are hiring these people, and you tell them, if we catch you hiring, this is the subcontractors, illegal aliens, guess what? You're going to have a problem with the federal government, and that's why all is drying up, and he's getting American help.
Yeah. Like this kid on this.
One last thing I want to put out. You know, they used to call Minnesota the land of 1,000 lakes. Why don't they change the name to the land of 1,000 federal fraudsters? 86 of them, I hear, at the latest count, have been indicted for, let's see, Medicaid fraud. These
Feed Our Future, right?
Yeah.
The meal one.
Federal housing fraud. I mean, the list goes on and on and on ad infinitum. And Tim Walsh, he don't see nothing, he don't know nothing, he don't do nothing. Well, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens with Pam Bondi if she can put a big girl pants on and stop putting some of these guys in jail where they belong. And I don't care who they are. If it's a governor of a state, if he's finagling the bagel, prosecute him.
Yeah, absolutely, Mark. I agree 100%. And we're seeing now, as this is breaking out, and thank you for the call, greatly appreciate it, we're seeing the pictures emerging of this one particular guy, right? There's the restaurant owner who claimed he had fed these thousands of people, and he has, 13 seats in the restaurant. And there's a fraudster out there, pictures of him with Walsh and Ilid Omar are surfacing. And it's starting to expose and cross. And I think, just by observation right now, and being a guy who has investigated things over the years, as long as nobody puts a kibosh on the investigation, I think Congresswoman Omar is in the middle of this crap. Ted?
Joe, as much as I have questions about the Somali way of life, and have had some exposure to it, I don't think this is a Somali fraud scheme. I think this is a Democrat Party fraud scheme.
Well, there was a correlation, I think I pointed it out at one time, that when Doge came on the scene and the USAID started being cut and dried up, and we were looking, somebody actually looked at what this money was supposed to be going for. Now, I'm saying that very specifically. They looked at what it was going for. But not a lot of people went and looked at what happened when it got there. So did it even get there? Just because the outgoing wire transfer or check, says this is for transgender operations in Guatemala or LGBTQ comic books in Brazil or whatever the hell the stuff was, did anybody actually go to the other end to see who got the money? Because when the USAID money that was pouring out of the federal government was going out, a lot of it went to NGOs. Boy, I hate those NGOs. I love the ones that do good work, but when they're used for money laundering, I have a problem with that. But did you notice the correlation between the money drying up going out of USAID and all of a sudden, what else is in the headlines? That the RNC is flush with cash and the DNC, for some reason, is not. That their donations have dried up, that the cash flow coming in has dried up. For some reason, they have like 11 million to 100 million. They're still paying off Kamala Harris's $20 million debt over the $1 billion.
Zelensky wants to know where the other half of his money is.
Yeah. So the guy that we were supposed to be sending all this money to is saying, could we check that? Because I didn't see that come in. What's going on? All this leads to something, but we got to wrap up the Monday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show here on AM 830 WCRN. Thank you for stopping by. Don't forget, it's a podcast when I get off the air. You can subscribe at Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you get your podcasts. It'll be back tomorrow afternoon, 1 o'clock, same bat time, same bat channel. Hey, Joe out, guys.